You know, every country has that one day, the huge national party, the big tradition that everyone looks forward to. But what happens when a global crisis hits and makes that tradition, well, impossible? We're going to look at the fascinating story of how one country's biggest celebration got a complete makeover, almost by accident. Picture this. It's 2020, and you're faced with a massive puzzle. How on earth do you throw a nationwide party when nobody's allowed to gather? How do you celebrate unity when everyone has to stay apart? It's a huge challenge, right? And this really gets to the heart of the problem. On one hand, you've got this cherished, long-standing tradition all about massive crowds and spectacle. On the other, you've got this urgent, non-negotiable need for public safety. You can't just cancel a national day, but you sure can't ignore a pandemic. Now, to really get the scale of this, you have to picture the traditional National Day Parade. We're talking a giant stadium or a massive floating platform, just absolutely packed with tens of thousands of cheering people. All eyes are on one single spectacular spot. It was the very definition of a huge, centralized event. And here you can just see the stark difference. On the left, that's the old normal, one big place, one huge crowd. But look at the right, the new reality. The celebration is now spread out across the entire island. Brought right to people's doorsteps, it's a complete flip of the script. So with this huge dilemma on their hands, the organizers didn't just make a few small changes. Nope, they basically engineered a whole new way of thinking about what a national celebration could even be. And this was their core concept, and it's so simple, it's brilliant. If the people can't come to the parade, we'll bring the parade to the people. Instead of trying to pull everyone into one location, they just reverse the flow and push the party out to where everyone already was. And when we say bringing it to the people, we're really talking about bringing it to the heartlands. Now, these are the sprawling public housing neighborhoods where most of the population lives. So the celebration wasn't just decentralized, it became hyper-local. I mean, we're talking right in their backyards. So what did this actually look like? Well, imagine instead of switching on the TV to watch the show, you just had to look out your window. The parade wasn't happening miles away downtown, it was happening right outside your home. And what a show it was! You had fighter jets roaring directly over apartment buildings. The mobile column, with all its tanks and military vehicles, drove right down local streets. The famous Red Lions parachutists, they didn't land in some fancy stadium, they landed in neighborhood fields. And the grand finale wasn't just one fireworks display, but more than 10 of them, all going off at the same time across the island. For literally hundreds of thousands of people, this was no longer a distant spectacle on a screen. It became a personal light show, something you shared with your actual neighbors watching from your own windows. The whole experience went from being a public event to a collection of personal memories. And all of this, it led to a completely unexpected result. The goal was just to adapt to a crisis, but the outcome was something so much more profound. It actually changed the whole feeling of the day. It's kind of a paradox, right? By physically keeping everyone apart, the celebration somehow felt more intimate and more connected. The sources describe this genuinely joyous atmosphere, a feeling that this smaller, simpler version was actually more meaningful than the giant spectacles of years past. And that is the crucial takeaway. The format was constrained, sure, but it didn't diminish the celebration. If anything, it amplified its real purpose. By bringing everything down to a human scale, it actually built a stronger, more authentic sense of unity. So why did this work so well? Well, a few key things. First, it was way more accessible. Everyone had a front row seat. Second, it felt deeply personal. It wasn't the fly past, it was our fly past, our fireworks. And third, it created this amazing shared experience. You had neighbors out on their balconies cheering together, and that builds some powerful community bonds. In the end, what started out as just a public health requirement turned into an incredible silver lining. The crisis forced a change, and that change led to a national day that was more inclusive, more personal, and for a lot of people, a lot more heartfelt than ever before. And that leaves us with a really fascinating question to think about. When a crisis forces you to innovate, and that innovation turns out to be better in some ways than the original, does the tradition change for good? It makes you wonder what other big events could be completely reimagined from the ground up.